I am Mrs. Edmondson, and I'm going to read Chapter 16, titled Al. The house feels different without the library cart in the basement. We are different. The dear cat remains outside with the books, and now suddenly Mr. Brock can't keep hold of the broom. It passes right through his fingers. Another thing, supper has become quite somber. Last night, Mr. Brock, after so many years of cheerful supper time book chatter with Miss Scoggin, just gazed at his potato, or looked sadly at the book on his lap. He sniffed loudly and said, Miss Scoggin, the young woman in this story, is being treated most unfairly. Most unfairly. I do wish I could help, but I suppose you will tell me that I'm only a ghost. He looked miserable. Maybe the lady's future is brighter than you think, I said, trying to cheer him up. In fact, Mr. Brock had told Miss Scoggin all about the ending of this book just a day ago, and so I knew that I knew what I was talking about. But as always, he pretended not to hear me. Things will get better, Miss Scoggin said, patting Mr. Brock's hand. I'm sure of it. She attempted to pick up her teacup. I watched her fingers pass through the handle several times before she managed it. I hope you're right, Mr. Brock said. A ghost can only hope, I suppose. He gave a long sigh. What courage! Then he paused, and a suspicious look came over him. But, Miss Scoggin, I suddenly have the strangest feeling that I have read this book before. Mr. Brock's shoulders slumped. I have no doubt told you all about it before. Miss Scoggin and I exchanged a look. And I have listened with such joy every time, she said. Mr. Brock used to remember every book he read. He had fetched hundreds of them over the years from the library in Grantville. But recently he had began to read the same story again and again without even noticing. But how wonderful, Mr. Brock, I said quietly, to be able to read the books you love most, as if for the first time. I'm quite jealous. He is very good at pretending that he neither sees nor hears me, but he has sat up a little straighter, gazed at Miss Scoggin, and managed to produce a small smile. I am a lucky man, he announced. Miss Scoggin's forehead was tight. She looked almost distressed. Is he all right? I whispered. My dear, she said in a low voice, this cannot go on forever, you know. She gestured impatiently. At the table? At ourselves sitting around it? I wonder if she was unhappy with my dinner. I had served baked potatoes for several nights in a row. What cannot go on? I asked her. Are you talking about Mr. Brock's books or the potatoes? Potatoes! She exploded. What does this have to do with potatoes? I'm talking about us. We can't stay much longer, my dear. Whenever she starts talking like that, I pretend not to hear her. I learned how from Mr. Brock. They went to bed early while I stayed up worrying and washing the dishes. It was painful to see Miss Scoggin so upset, but it's hard to solve a problem when you don't know what it is. Today I woke up determined to make the day a good one. I fixed Miss Scoggin's tea, put 2 sugar cubes on her saucer, climbed the stairs and knocked on her door. Come in, she barked. I put on an extra large smile and entered her room. She was sitting up in bed, fiddling with her pin. It won't stay on straight, she said. Ugh, impossible thing. Gently I took it from her and fastened it to her shirt. There, I said. It's perfectly level. And here's your tea. She sighed. Thank you, my dear. I'm just a bit tired today. Her librarian pin from our library days, an impossible thing. I had never once heard her complain about it before. I touched 2 fingers to my own pin and hoped this was not another changed thing. As I was closing Miss Scoggin's door behind me, I heard 2 quick knocks from below. My heart jumped, and I rushed down the stairs and opened the front door. No one. Just a small paper bag. I scooped it up. I knew what was in the bag. A tuna fish and dill pickle sandwich on rye bread with lettuce. In my library days, It was my favorite lunch. The sandwich arrived every Wednesday, but I am never quick enough to see who has left it for me. I carried it smiling to the icebox, but then I thought, what's wrong with tuna for breakfast? Especially after a week of potatoes. So here I sit, eating it, and thinking about the dear boy again. It must be because of all the fuss about the library pins. One day, long ago, when I was when I was still getting to know him, I asked Miss Scoggin for some advice. Could I be doing more to draw the dear boy out, to make him want to sit with us on the rug during Wednesday book club? Miss Scoggin said, his mother died last summer. My advice is to let him sit where he wants to. Oh, I said, and she gave me the understanding look. As Miss Scoggin knew, I was also motherless. In fact, I had no memory of a mother or a father. At the orphanage, it had sometimes been said that those of us without parent memories were the lucky ones, but I was never sure about that. It's true that I did not long for my parents the way some others did, but aren't parents the source of a life's direction? If life is a line leading somewhere, aren't parents the dot from which it sets forth? Even people who dislike their parents, as one or two of my orphanage friends claim they do, had a from. But me, I was told that I could make up my own from. Imagine whatever you like, the orphanage manager told me. Any of it could be true. Anything. But I didn't even know where to start. Were they farmers, acrobats, doctors, spies, sailors, horse people? Were they kind, careless, selfish, brave, horrible, wonderful? I would lie in bed, imagining. It was hard work. I preferred once I had been taught how to read stories that other people had imagined. First, I read all the stories in the book room at the orphanage, and then I found all the other places books were hiding in the building. Our cook had a wonderful collection in her bedroom. She had kept every book she loved as a child. I worked my way through her shelves while helping in the kitchen, which meant occasionally stirring the soup with a spoon in one hand while holding a book with the other. Then, in third grade, I discovered the public library. There were, I realized, many, many books to read. Until then, I had been slightly worried about running out. At the orphanage, each of us had a flashlight, and I began to stay up very late with mine, reading until my eyes would not stay open, which meant that I usually didn't manage to turn my flashlight off. Luckily, I knew where the batteries were kept. And then the orphanage manager found me rooting through the battery drawer, which was almost empty. She told me, gently, that I would need to start getting my own batteries. Let's go to the battery library then, I told her. I'm going to need a lot. She laughed. The what? The battery library, I insisted, shaking my flashlight at her. To borrow batteries. Oh, there were no battery libraries. Batteries had to be bought with money. Batteries, she explained, were expensive. And once you were done with them, that was it. They were used up. For the first time, it occurred to me that books don't get used up. Books got powered by the reader, didn't they? They could be read again and again, and as long as no one dropped them into the soup, which only happened once. But I still needed batteries. The manager said that I had given her an idea. She would lend me battery money now, and I could pay her back later. How? I asked her. I don't have any money to pay you back with. She said I would get a job when I was older. Since I like books so much, maybe I could get a job at the library. And that is what happened. My first job was at our city library, an old, very large, not too clean building, squeezed between a small bank and a smaller hardware store. To me, that library always looked like a grubby giant whose arms had been tied behind its back. My job was after school because I was only 13 years old. Mostly I mopped and looked with great longing at the young adults who stamped their circulation cards, wheeled around the squeaky carts full of books, and talked to the patrons. about books. They were, I learned, assistant librarians. I mopped and cleaned toilets. Ugh. Nobody talked to me. But I had library privileges and battery money. This is the end of chapter 16.